So what's it like being Asian American in today's America? It's 2021. I guess I always, you always think that progress is being made. As time passes, things will get better. And that's true for a lot of things. So time can heal a lot, but I think there are certain things that time can't really heal. So it needs to be time and action and awareness. And some things just aren't going to get better unless they're addressed, no matter how much time has passed. And I think that racism in America is one of those things. It's hard to even feel like we're making any progress. Growing up Asian, I experienced a fair amount of racism and a fair amount of bullying related to racism. So I want to share a little bit about what it's like for me being Asian American. These are examples that occur often, literally some of them every day. And I want to preface this video by saying that these examples are very, very mild and tame, and they're just mere inconveniences and just awkward encounters for the most part. They can't even compare to the horrific violence that we're witnessing against Asians in the news lately, especially. And it's not to say that that's even new. It just means that media is covering it a little bit more right now. I wanted to do, a discussion video about the Atlanta shootings, and honestly, I just can't. I can't even fully process all of that just yet. So let's get into it. Rude versus racist. So I'm highly aware of the various types of customer service personalities out there. Often I'll find myself in line at checkout or, and I'm able to kind of observe the employee that's, helping others in front of me. And I'll notice this often. So with this type of interaction, it's not something you can tell whether or not it's for sure racist or not. But what I can observe, let's say the person is super chatty, super outgoing and bubbly and whatever, toward all these people in front of me. And then when I get up to the counter, they won't even say hello. Sometimes it'll just be almost like a switch has been flipped. Obviously they're gonna help me, they're gonna check out my stuff or whatever, but there's no side conversation. There's no, how are you today? It's a very cold interaction. Could be that just their personality type. But I will time and again notice it where it's literally everyone in front of me gets a totally different person. So this type of stuff happens literally all the time, or even when I'm first entering the store, the salespeople on the floor won't look up, won't acknowledge me. But then as I'm shopping around the store, I'll notice they're greeting everyone who's come in since I've been in there. And these are such little things. Will drive myself crazy if I focus on it. Let's say I'm telling my husband later, or I'm telling someone oh, I got weird feelings in this store. I don't know. It's I was the only non-white person in there and whatever. And depending on who I'm speaking with, sometimes I question whether I'm crazy. Is it me being too something about this? Am I too sensitive about it? Am I looking for something that's not there? And it's funny the term gaslighting, I had never really heard that term before until recently. And it's what. If I'm understanding the term correctly, it's when you're kind of made to feel you're the crazy one. It's all in your head. It's not for real. You're seeing things, you're imagining things. And literally that's how I don't know, it applies so well, to my life. I feel like that's been my life. So anyway, rude versus racist, it's always hard to tell, but I'm always also on the lookout for being able to distinguish the two. So I don't think it's just Asians. I don't think and sometimes I'm sure it's not even race related, but it's something that I'm highly aware of and highly sensitive to. So number 2, questioning my citizenship. So being Asian American, I work in healthcare in a specialty field. I see patients every day clinically, and patients will always ask in one way or another what I'm doing in the States. Or how long have I been here? And so, for instance, just yesterday, I had a patient say, quote, I ask everyone this, were you born and raised here? And I'm thinking to myself, really? Do you ask everyone this? I highly doubt it. And anyway, even though so I wasn't born here, but I was adopted, and so just to end this whole conversation, I was like, yes. And he was like, really? And so super surprised and super shocked. And this is like a frequent scenario for me working as a specialist in the healthcare field in America. Literally every day, like something about my race will come up. And sometimes it's meant to be a compliment. Sometimes it's just people being curious. Sometimes, I don't know. So like in various shapes and forms, it'll come up. Number 3, speaking to me in an Asian language. So people will say to me whatever random phrase they may know or have heard, or I don't know, any random words, terms, phrases in any Asian language, they feel compelled to say them to me. And this is like serious interactions. This is not like, I don't know, like catcalling on the street or anything like that, which is like that's a whole different video. Like, yeah. But this is like real interaction. So again, most of the time it's patients, because I see patients all day, every day. I see a lot of different people. And yeah, and if we don't have an existing relationship, people, I guess, are curious. I don't know. So when I say English is my primary language, they may end it there or go on to ask further inappropriate questions, like the other day, like recently. So this is all like, I could even think in the matter of a week of like interacting with people at my regular job, I could come up with so many things. But anyway, this is like a roundup of the most common and the most frequently occurring types of interactions. So a week ago or so, I was seeing an older male gentleman, and he happened to be a veteran, and he served in Korea, not in the war, but he was stationed in Korea for a time. And he said, "안녕하세요," like, and I said to him, I do not speak Korean. And he said, "Oh, so you lost it?" And I said, I've never known the Korean language, because I'm adopted. And he goes on to say, "Oh, did you lose your mother?" And it's like, there's so much wrong with this whole interaction. It's just, there's too much to unpack there. Like, so people have no filter, number 1, which is probably not news to anyone, but my white colleagues and fellow doctors are not fielding the same types of personal questions that I do on a day-to-day. So I will say that with confidence. So, on the same topic of language, people will assume that I don't speak English, or they will compliment me on my English, or that they will assume that they won't be able to understand me because of my accent, which English is literally like my most primary language. I speak a little French and a little Spanish, and I would hope to learn Korean at some point. In my clinical work with patients, part of some of the assessments will involve testing that is conducted in the format of like verbal questions requiring either a verbal and or written response. And I've had patients I've tested make excuses for their poor performances by stating they would have done better if they were tested by someone else because they couldn't understand my accent. So I remember one specific instance where, so a male colleague and friend, he was working for the same practice as me at the time, and he saw a patient that I had seen previously for the testing, and that's what like the gentleman told him, was that he feels like he would have done better on the testing if he had, like, meaning my friend, my colleague, had tested him. And granted, my friend is a white male. My friend responded to him, was like, "What? Like, she doesn't have any accent and she speaks English." And so, I mean, he definitely stood up for me. He's like questioning, like, she's not the reason why you didn't perform well. And the interesting part about that too is my friend was like Southern. He was like from the South, and my friend has like a Southern accent, like a heavier kind of drawl accent. So it's like he has more of an accent than I do. And because he looks the part, though, he is a white male in a white coat, in a doctor's coat, and because I look foreign, because Asian will always look foreign to people, he perceives me to have an accent, even though I obviously don't. Number 5, trying to guess what kind of Asian I am. Though this is a fun one. So, you know, I'm sure most fellow Asians can relate to this, but I've had people ask me, like, "Are you Chinese?" No. "Are you Japanese?" No. Vietnamese? No. And this could go on. Like, if you go on, you know what I mean? Like, at this point, I don't even know. Like, I'm speechless. So usually I'll finally say, like, I'm Korean, just to get them to shut up. How is this any of your business? How is it appropriate? How is it just, yeah. Like, yeah. And then once I say I'm Korean, they may go on to say, well, oh, my brother's wife's sister's best friend's mother once knew a Korean, or something ridiculous like that. Just inappropriate. Like, there's no. So it's just, people are ridiculous. Last one for today, because this could, I could go on forever. There's so many examples of all this. But number 6, dealing with racially charged bullying. So, as if it isn't like hard enough being a kid in school, like figuring out who you are, all that. But living in America, if you're Asian, then there's an extra target on your back. And it's basically like built-in like bullying material. So I could go into much more hostile interactions from my past experiences. Some sexual, some not, some just bullying, what have you. Maybe that's a different video. Recently, my daughter she's 5 and she's in kindergarten. And she recently came home from school and she was showing her 2-year-old brother funny faces that she learned at school. And the funny face she was making was pulling her eyes outward to make them narrow. Now, the debate here between my husband and myself is it just kids making their faces look different from their natural state, which could be perceived as funny by them, or is it racial? And for reference, my husband is white, and he himself will admit he has not really experienced any adversity in his life. Me being me with my lived experience, in this type of instance, I will always assume it's racially charged. And that's from like past experiences. That's not just me being judgy or me jumping to conclusions. That's just because it always is. So, like kids coming up to me in school or when in my younger days, like making that like same face, they were not just making a random quote unquote funny face. Granted, our daughter, so here's the other thing. Our daughter does not look obviously Asian. She would lean more like Caucasian, like my husband. She looks probably a little bit more like him. Even like she herself does not identify herself as Asian. So it's difficult to say whether that funny face was racially motivated or not. And honestly, for better or worse, like she doesn't associate that face with being anything negative right now. This is all really recent. I don't know how we're going to necessarily address that just yet. There was also an instance recently, and I actually reached out on some of the Facebook groups about this. She came home and she was telling us about school, and she had music class that day. And I guess they're singing a song, like it's Mama Buy Me a China Doll. I looked it up. The song itself is fine, and it's referring to a porcelain face doll. So it's not to do with the country at all of China. It's not to do with like Chinese people or anything like that. I do have issue with that being sung at school, and not because of the song itself. Like I said, I realize that it's not about that at all. It's not Chinese people, it's not Asian people. But my thing with that is I think that those terms like China doll, or it's just, it's a sexual term. And no, they're not thinking about it like this. I'm sure the teacher has no idea and whatever. And my child is the only Asian kid like in that school. Things like that, I don't think that's bullying, and I don't think that's probably intended to be anything offensive. I don't know what to make of that, actually. Honestly. I just don't understand why it's even, if it's a debate at all. There are literally millions of songs out there. I just don't understand why this was chosen. And it does give me pause. It gives me a little bit of just, I don't know, it makes me feel something. So, and I'm sure I'm literally the only one who feels anything about it. And on the Facebook groups, it was honestly a fair mix. Like there was a lot of people who were like, oh, it's just a song, it's not talking about that, which I realized. And there were a lot of people who were like, no, like say something, like that's not okay. And like they were kind of along the same lines as me, like if there's any question about it, why didn't they just pick a different song? Like there are so many songs that don't reference anything that's even questionable. So anyway, those are just a couple things that I wanted to share about what it's like being Asian in America. If you're new here, I'd love if you subscribed and liked this video. I talk about a lot of this type of stuff. I'm going to be doing more discussions about racism, anti-Asian sentiment, probably discussing the Atlanta shootings too, because I do have a lot to say about that. I just can't quite put into words. So stick around, subscribe if you want more discussions like this. Leave a comment or DM on Instagram if there's specific topics or videos you'd like to see. But thanks for watching, and if you're Asian in particular and you're watching this, please stay safe. Just know you're not alone. I hope everyone stays safe. It's bad enough we have like the virus going on, and then now we have this other nonsense to kind of deal with. So I hope everyone stays safe out there. Thanks for watching. Take care.